In this video, we're going to talk about objects traveling with constant velocity. That is, they move equal distances in equal amounts of time. We often express this relationship, the relationship between velocity, distance, and time, as velocity is equivalent to the distance an object travels in the time it takes for the object to travel that distance. Now, there are a few other ways to express this exact same relationship, that is, the relationship amongst velocity, distance, and time. One of those relationships says that the distance an object travels when it's traveling with constant velocity is equal to the object's velocity times the time it takes for that object to travel this distance. That is, if we want to know how far an object travels, we need to know how fast it's traveling and how long the object's been traveling for. Another way to express this relationship is to say that the time it takes for an object to travel a certain distance is equal to the distance the object travels divided by the velocity the object's traveling at. That is, if we know how far the object travels and how fast it's traveling, we can figure out how long it takes to travel that distance. Now, a lot of students make the mistake of trying to memorize three different formulas given the one fundamental relationship. That is, velocity is equal to the distance an object travels divided by the time it takes to travel that distance. In this first video, what I'd like to do is just examine this concept of constant velocity a little bit and then solve a few problems. In later videos, we'll work with these ideas, but we won't use these. But I'm going to strongly discourage people from memorizing these two, if you want to call them formula or relationships, because you can easily get to those by manipulating this one equation. Now, the first thing I'd like to do is give an example of velocity. So suppose you have some object and it's traveling with a velocity of 2 meters per second. What does that actually mean to travel a distance of 2 meters per second? One way to express this 2 meters per second is to say an object travels 2 meters per every 1 second. We often speak this as 2 meters per 1 second, or 2 meters per second. So if this is the object's starting point, in 1 second the object's going to travel a distance of 2 meters, or 2 meters per 1 second. If this object continues to travel at a rate of 2 meters per second, in 1 more second the object will travel an additional 2 meters, or 2 meters in 1 more second. Now, if you wanted to know how far this object travels in 2 seconds, so 1 second plus 1 second is 2 seconds, each second it travels 2 meters, or a total distance of 4 meters. And this is the idea behind objects traveling with constant velocity. They move equal distances in equal amounts of time, and hence it's constant velocity. Now suppose, instead of being given the velocity, that is, instead of being given the velocity equals 2 meters per second, let's suppose you're just given an object's distance, that is, how far the object travels in a specific interval of time, a specific period of time. So suppose the object travels a distance of 100 meters, and you measure the time it takes for that object to travel that 100 meters. Suppose it takes exactly 50 seconds for this object to travel 100 meters. So here's our distance, and this is the time interval during which it takes to travel the 100 meters. You're going to go right to your definition of velocity, which says that velocity equals the distance an object travels divided by the time it takes for that object to travel that distance. Now, you know your distance. You know the time it takes to travel that distance. So now what you'll do is you'll plug in the values for which you know. In this case, you know the distance, you know the time it takes to travel that distance, and you know 100 is your distance, and you know exactly the length, it's 100 meters. You cannot forget the units of measurement, divided by the time it takes to travel this distance, which is 50 seconds. Now the next step is to divide 100 by 50. When you divide 100 by 50, you get 100 divided by 50. And don't forget the units. The units are going to be meters per second. And so when you divide 100 by 50, you get 2. And don't forget the units, meters per second. And that would be how to calculate velocity given the distance an object travels and the time it takes for that object to travel that distance.